Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're plunging into, one of the biggest scientific puzzles out there, consciousness itself.
Right. We all experience it, obviously, but what is it fundamentally? How does it, connect to the physical world? Still huge questions.
And when you start digging into consciousness, you immediately bump up against our basic ideas about, reality. Especially space and time.
Exactly. Our whole default way of thinking is, information comes through the five senses, what you see, hear, touch, right here, right now.
But what if that's not the whole story? What if you could get information from somewhere else? Somewhere far away, physically?
Or, and this is where it gets really interesting, what if you could get info from another time?
That's precisely what this material we're looking at today explores. Research into things that just don't seem to fit those normal boundaries, often called extrasensory perception.
Right, that's the umbrella term, yeah. ESP.
So we've got this really fascinating set of sources, research papers, history, actual experiments, all looking at whether the mind can get knowledge in ways beyond those standard senses.
And our mission today is really to unpack all that. Look at the experiments, how they were done, the results, the stats, and see what insights they might offer. About perception, maybe working beyond space and time as we usually think of them.
We're going to cover three main areas from these sources: getting information from far away, mind-to-mind links across distance, and maybe the strangest one, sensing things about the future.
Okay, so let's start with that first one, getting information from distant places. The sources often call this remote viewing.
Remote viewing. Okay, how do they define that?
So the definition here is basically a type of ESP where someone, the viewer, can describe a target that's far away. Could be a place, a thing, even a person, something they absolutely can't see or hear normally.
Like getting sensory details about something distant.
Kind of, yeah. Impressions, feelings, visual fragments.
And the history behind this research, as laid out here, is pretty dramatic. It drops us right into the Cold War.
It really does. Mid-1970s, you've got the U.S. military, the CIA, the DIA. They start this top-secret project. Codename, Stargate.
Stargate. Sounds like sci-fi, but it was real government money. What were they trying to find out?
The core question was, could remote viewing actually work for spying? Could they use this unusual ability to gather real intelligence on, say, Soviet missile sites or something?
And it wasn't just a quick look. This went on for a while.
Oh, yeah. 20 years, apparently.
Yeah.
Budget around $20 million. A lot of the key research happened at Stanford Research Institute, SRI, led by two physicists, actually, Russell Targ and Hal Puthoff.
Physicists. Interesting. So they're trying to approach it scientifically.
That was the idea. Bring rigor to it. How did they actually test it in those early days?
How did the experiments work?
Well, the sources describe a few setups. A common one involved a sender. This person would go to a randomly chosen place, right? A location the viewer had no idea about. The viewer would be somewhere else, maybe another building, maybe miles away. And they'd just try to describe their impressions of where the sender was. Talking, drawing.
Impressions. Like feelings, shapes, colors.
Yeah, sensory fragments, bits of knowledge, that kind of thing.
And how did they know if it worked? How was it judged?
They'd have independent judges look at the viewer's description or drawing and compare it to the actual target location. Critically, the judges usually didn't know what the target was either.
Ah, so they were blind to the answer.
Exactly. Helps avoid bias. They'd rate how well it matched. Success was based on that correspondence. There's another version, too, where the sender focused on a randomly picked image instead of a place.
Like from a photo collection.
Yeah, a big pool of photos. Viewer tries to describe the image.
And the methods got tighter over time, it says here.
Yeah, definitely. They focused on improving the protocols. A big step was moving to double-blind conditions, meaning neither the viewer nor the experimenter interacting directly with the viewer knew what the target was for that specific trial. Cuts down potential clues even further.
Okay, makes sense. So did they actually get useful info from Stargate, according to these sources?
The claim is yes. They reported getting details on things like strategic sites, enemy weapons, even tracking terrorist groups or drug operations. The idea was that it had a real-world intelligence value.
The material also names some specific people involved, like Ingo Swann.
Right. Swann is described as a real standout, a star viewer. He was an artist, actually, but became central to the program. He didn't just participate. He apparently trained intelligence folks for about 10 years and even helped design the early experiments with Targ and Puthoff.
And there's that famous story about him and Jupiter.
Yeah, it's pretty well known. During a remote viewing session, he described seeing a ring around Jupiter. This was before scientists generally knew Jupiter had rings. That's the account. Years later, the Pioneer 10 probe flew by Jupiter and, yep, confirmed a ring system. So Swan's description suddenly looked quite prescient, or maybe just accurate in an unexplainable way.
That's quite an anecdote. Then there's Stephan Schwartz, linked with intuitive archaeology.
Schwartz is another key figure mentioned. He applied similar methods to finding things underwater, like shipwrecks or locating hidden archaeological sites.
And the source details the Alexandria Project he ran.
Yes, 1978 to 79. The specific aim was to test if remote viewing could be useful for archaeology. They targeted areas around Alexandria in Egypt.
And it had 2 phases.
Correct. Phase 1 was in the U.S. 11 remote viewers. They just got standard questionnaires, blank cards, nothing leading. Their impressions were collected and sent off to a neutral third party, a bailiff, for analysis.
A bailiff. Okay, totally independent.
Right. And based only on the patterns and what those 11 viewers described, they pinpointed 3 specific areas in Alexandria that seemed promising for investigation.
So people in the U.S. are describing details that point to specific spots in Egypt.
That was the process. Then phase 2. Schwartz, his team, and 2 of the original viewers went to Alexandria. They used the data from phase 1 to guide where they looked.
And the results are called spectacular here. What did they find?
Well, according to this, they located and described several major historical sites, things believed to be Mark Antony's palace, Cleopatra's palace, parts of the ancient lighthouse, even the old city of Maria.
Wow, those are huge finds. How did the remote viewing help?
The claim is that the viewer data was essential in making the first modern map of Alexandria's eastern harbor. Schwartz apparently emphasized how much faster it made things. They could send divers to very specific zones based on the viewer's consensus descriptions.
Okay, let's circle back to Stargate. What was the final verdict? Did the government decide it worked?
When the project ended, the CIA commissioned an official review. They got 2 evaluators with very different reputations. Jessica Utz, a statistics professor known for looking into controversial stuff.
Okay.
And Ray Hyman, a psychology professor very well known as a prominent skeptic of psychic phenomena.
A statistician and a skeptic? Sounds like they might disagree.
And they did. The conclusion was officially mixed. Utz, looking at the statistics, basically said the evidence for remote viewing was solid, statistically significant.
And Hyman, the skeptic.
Hyman disagreed that it was proven, but, and this is important, he acknowledged that the positive results weren't just due to bad math or sloppy experiments.
So even the skeptic admitted the results were weird, methodologically speaking.
He conceded the results were anomalous and not easily explained by flaws in the design. Coming from Hyman, that was a significant point.
Were these kinds of results found anywhere else outside of Stargate?
Yes, the sources point to independent replications. A big one was the PE Air Lab Princeton Engineering Anomalies Research, headed by Robert John and Brenda Dunn at Princeton University.
Princeton, so another serious academic effort.
Right. Between 76 and 99, they ran over 650 remote viewing trials with dozens of participants. And get this, some of their tests were precognitive. The target wasn't even picked until after the viewer recorded their impressions.
Whoa. Looking into the future, we'll get to that later, but what were the overall stats for PEER?
The statistical outcome for those 653 trials, the odds of getting those results just by chance were calculated as 1 in 33 million.
1 in 33 million. That's incredibly unlikely to be just luck.
Extremely unlikely. So you take Stargate, PER, the Alexandria Project. The sources present this body of work as strong empirical evidence that somehow people can access information about distant places or things without using normal senses.
Okay, which leads us nicely into the second area. Mind-to-mind connections. Telepathy.
Telepathy, yeah. Classic ESP. The sources go back to Joseph Banks Ryan for the early scientific work here.
J.B. Ryan at Duke University. He coined the term ESP, didn't he?
He did. He was a botanist turned psychologist in the 1930s. He wanted to study things like telepathy, clairvoyance, seeing distant events, clairaudience, precognition, scientifically. He grouped them under extrasensory perception.
And his big contribution was trying to make it testable, measurable.
Exactly. He worked with Carl Zener, another psychologist, to develop statistical methods. That's where the Zener cards came from.
Ah, yes, the famous cards. Star, wavy lines.
Plus sign, circle, square, 5 simple symbols. A deck had 25 cards, 5 of each.
So pure chance of guessing one right is 1 in 5, 20%.
Right. That's your baseline. If people consistently scored well above 20% over many trials, statistically, That suggested something beyond chance was happening. ESP, potentially?
And Ryan did tons of these experiments.
Hundreds of experiments, thousands and thousands of trials. For telepathy, typically a sender in one room would look at a Zener card from a shuffled deck. The receiver, isolated in another room, would try to guess the symbol.
Okay.
And the overall results, according to the sources, led Ryan to believe there was genuine evidence for ESP.
But Ryan also noticed a problem, right, with doing the same thing over and over.
He did. He found that people's scores tended to decline. It just got too boring, too monotonous, guessing card after card. The effect seemed to fade.
Makes sense. So the field needed new ways to test this.
Which led to the Ganzfeld experiment in the 1970s. Researchers like William Broad, Charles Honorton, Adrian Parker, they had this idea. Maybe if you reduce the normal sensory input, the noise, it's easier to pick up on these faint psi signals.
Like trying to hear a whisper in a quiet room instead of a noisy one.
Good analogy. It connects to ideas from, like, ancient meditation practices, quieting the mind to perceive subtle things. The Ganzfeld technique itself wasn't new. It was used in psychology to create a kind of mild sensory deprivation.
How does it work? What's the setup?
You have the receiver relax in a comfy chair. They wear headphones playing steady white noise. And then you put these translucent halves of ping pong balls over their eyes.
Ping pong ball.
Yeah, it sounds weird. But you shine a diffused red light onto them. It creates this uniform, featureless visual field. No shapes, no changes. Just red fog. That's the Ganzfeld, German for whole field.
Okay, so sight and sound are basically blanked out.
Right. The idea is this quiet state might make the person more receptive to subtle ESP impressions. While the receiver chills out like that, an assistant randomly picks a target, usually one image or video clip out of a set of 4.
So they're decoys.
Exactly. Then, the sender, in a separate room, gets that one target image or clip and tries to mentally send it to the receiver for maybe 20-30 minutes. They focus on it, try to convey the feelings, the visuals.
And then the receiver has to pick it out.
After the sending time, you turn off the noise, take off the eye covers. The experimenter shows the receiver all 4 possible targets from the set. The receiver ranks them 1 to 4 based on which one best matches whatever impressions they had during the Ganzfeld state.
And a hit is only if they rank the actual target number 1.
Correct. With 4 choices, you'd expect them to get it right 25% of the time just by guessing. So you look for hitting rates significantly above 25%.
And Charles Honorton improved this with the auto Ganzfeld.
Yes, in the 80s. He automated the whole process to remove potential bias. Computers randomly selected the target video clip, presented it to the sender, controlled the timing, and even showed the 4 choices to the receiver for judging at the end. Very tightly controlled.
What kind of results did Honorton get with this automated system?
His program ran 354 sessions with 240 different people. The overall success rate ranking the correct target first was 37%.
37% compared to 25% chance. What are the odds of that happening randomly?
The probability was calculated as 1 in 45,000. Very statistically significant.
1 in 45,000. Okay, that's another big number against chance. Was this replicated? Did other labs get similar results?
Crucially, yes. The sources stressed this. Researchers like Adrian Parker, Dick Bierman, Daryl Bem, Dean Radin, respected names, they ran independent Ganzfeld studies and got similar positive results.
So it wasn't just Honorton's lab?
No. And then they did meta-analyses combining the results from all these different studies. One big meta-analysis found an overall success rate across labs of 33.2%.
Still well above the 25% chance baseline.
And the odds against that combined result being due to chance, the sources say greater than 1 million billion to 1.
A million billion. Okay, that's astronomical.
It really is. The point made is that dozens of researchers across different countries have reproduced this effect. Multiple meta-analyses confirm a statistically robust finding suggesting telepathy, or at least anomalous information transfer, in the Ganzfeld setting.
Now, some people might hear 33% or 37% and think, well, that's only 8 or 12 points above chance. Doesn't sound that impressive.
That's a reasonable reaction. The sources acknowledge that psi effects, when averaged over general populations, often appear small in magnitude, even if they're statistically very strong, meaning highly unlikely to be chance.
But did everyone score the same? Were there groups that did better?
Yes. Performance seemed higher in certain groups. The example given is artists who apparently hit around 47% in some studies.
Nearly double the chance rate.
Right. And the type of target mattered too. Dynamic video clips seemed to work better than static pictures, especially if the sender was really engaged with the clip. Suggests the signal might be stronger with more engaging material.
Okay, so remote viewing suggests accessing info across space. Telepathy suggests mind-to-mind links, both challenging spatial limits.
Which brings us to the third and perhaps most challenging area, pushing beyond time. Research into knowing or sensing the future precognition and presentiment.
But precognition is like knowing a specific future event, right? Well, presentiment is more like a gut feeling and unease. And premonition often involves dreams.
That's the general distinction, yeah. And the sources start this section with some pretty striking stories, even if they're anecdotal.
Like the Winston Churchill ones during World War II.
Yeah, really vivid. One time during an air raid dinner at 10 Downing Street, he suddenly gets up, goes to the kitchen, and tells the housekeepers working there to get to the shelter now. Minutes later, a bomb hits the kitchen.
Just a sudden urge that saved them.
Another time, he's leaving an anti-aircraft site, about to get in his car. He says he felt this inner voice telling him not to sit in his usual spot on the right side. He sat on the left instead. Then, boom, a bomb hits the right side of the car.
Wow. Feels like some kind of unconscious warning. And then there's the David Booth story about the plane crash.
That one's chillin'. May 1979, this guy David Booth has the exact same nightmare for 10 nights straight. A detailed dream of an American Airlines DC-10 crashing right after takeoff.
10 nights.
Yeah. He was so troubled he actually called the airline and the FAA to warn them. 4 days after his last dream, American Airlines Flight 191, a DC-10, crashed near Chicago O'Hare, just like in his dream, one of the worst U.S. air disasters.
That's incredibly eerie. So how do researchers try to study this scientifically beyond anecdotes?
Well, Dr. Larry Dossey, who talked about the non-local mind, suggested presentiment might work through physical feelings, anxiety, unease, like a bodily warning system.
And he mentioned a study about train accidents. William Cox.
Yes, Cox looked at train accident data back in the 50s. He found that, statistically, trains that crashed tended to have significantly fewer passengers than usual for that route on other days.
Fewer people chose to ride on the day of the crash.
That's the implication. The example given is a train crash in 1952. Only 9 passengers were on board. The average for that train on previous days was 62. It suggests maybe people unconsciously avoided it.
Interesting statistical pattern.
Yeah.
What about lab experiments on precognition?
They've been going on for a long time, over 80 years, according to the sources. Early ones were simple guessing games. Which side will the dice land on? Which light will turn on? Which Zener card will be chosen after you guess?
Forced choice guessing of a future random event.
Exactly. And a big meta-analysis looked at over 300 of these studies done between 1935 and 1987.
What did it find overall?
The combined odds against the results being just chance were calculated as 1 in 10 to the power of 25.
1 followed by 25 zeros. That's basically impossible odds for chance.
Right. The source says, based on that, chance can legitimately be excluded as the explanation. A very strong claim based on decades of data.
So this statistical foundation led people like Dean Radin to look for physiological signs of knowing the future. Presentiment in the body.
Exactly. Radin asked, could your nervous system react to an emotional event before it happens? Not consciously knowing, but physically reacting.
How did he test that?
He'd have people sit in front of a computer, hooked up to sensors measuring things like heart rate, skin conductance, which shows emotional arousal.
Measuring unconscious body reaction.
Yes. The person clicks a mouse to start a trial. After they click, the computer randomly picks an image, either something emotionally charged, erotic, violent, or something calm, a landscape.
Okay, so the image is chosen after the trial starts.
Crucially, yes. Then the screen stays blank for 5 seconds, then the image appears for 3 seconds, then a break.
So there's a gap between the computer choosing the image and the person seeing it.
Right. And Radin looked at the physiological data during that blank screen period, comparing trials where an emotional image was about to appear versus trials where a calm image was about to appear.
And what happened?
Well, obviously, when the emotional pictures did appear, people's bodies reacted. But the amazing part was the physiological response. The arousal actually started before the picture appeared on the screen.
It started during the blank screen period.
It started diverging right after the mouse click, as soon as the future emotional stimulus had been selected by the computer, but before the person saw anything.
And the body seemed to know what kind of picture was coming, reacting in advance.
That's the interpretation. An unconscious physiological anticipation of a future emotional event. Radin noted people weren't consciously aware of this happening. He thought maybe presentiment works unconsciously, bypassing our mental filters.
What were the statistics on Radin's experiments?
Across 4 studies, the odds against his combined results being chance were about 1 in 125,000.
Another highly significant result. Was this replicated too?
Yes. Dick Bierman did similar work, but used fMRI brain scans. He found that brain areas linked to emotion became active before the emotional pictures were shown.
The brain was firing as if seeing the emotional image before it actually saw it.
That's what the fMRI data suggested, adding a neurological component. And the sources say this basic finding, physiological or brain responses preceding future stimuli, has now been reproduced in about 40 different studies across various labs, using different measures like EEG, heart rate, pupil dilation.
40 studies.
Yes. A meta-analysis of those studies concluded the evidence suggests we can sometimes unconsciously perceive our future.
Unconsciously perceive our future. That's a profound statement based on lab data.
And then you have Daryl Bem's famous 2011 paper. Bem is a well-respected social psychologist at Cornell. He published precognition experiments in a top-tier psychology journal.
That must have caused a stir, publishing this kind of thing in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology.
Huge stir, huge debate. Bem ran 9 experiments with over 1,000 students. One protocol involved showing students 2 curtains on a screen. They had to guess which curtain hid a picture. They thought it was a clairvoyance test.
But it wasn't really.
The trick was, the computer didn't randomly place the picture behind a curtain until after the student clicked their choice. So they were actually trying to predict a future random event.
Okay, clever design.
And Bem used a lot of erotic images, thinking they'd be more motivating or easier to sense. Chance is 50-50.
Right. What did he find?
For the erotic images, students guessed correctly 53.1% of the time. A small effect, but statistically significant, unlikely to be chance over that many trials. For neutral pictures, they scored right around 50%, just chance.
So a slight but significant edge in predicting where the future erotic image would appear.
Exactly. The sources summarize all this, Radin, Bem, the replications, as confirming that it is sometimes possible to gain access, consciously or otherwise, to information from the future.
Which, if you accept the data, really messes with our standard idea of time flowing in one direction.
Totally. It suggests maybe parts of our mind aren't locked into the present moment. It makes you think of that Einstein quote mentioned here.
About the distinction between past, present, and future being an illusion.
Yeah, that one. And time does not flow in one direction. Maybe our subjective experience of time isn't the whole picture of how reality works.
The source also touches on physicist Philippe Guillemot's ideas.
Briefly, Guillemot suggests maybe our future isn't fixed, but it exists already as multiple possibilities, multiple potential versions simultaneously.
Like untapped potentials existing in some state.
Right, and perhaps precognition is somehow accessing information from those potential, not yet experienced futures. It's a way some theorists are trying to make sense of these results.
Okay, so let's try to wrap this up. We've gone through a lot of material suggesting perception might not be limited by space or time in the ways we usually assume.
Right. We saw remote viewing studies, Stargate, Schwartz's archaeology work, showing statistically significant results for describing distant targets.
Then telepathy research, from Ryan's early card test to the sophisticated Ganzfeld and auto-Ganzfeld protocols, with those incredibly high odds against chance from replications and meta-analyses.
Suggesting some kind of mind-to-mind connection seems possible under certain conditions.
And finally, precognition and presentiment. From anecdotes to lab studies measuring body and brain responses before future events, and experiments like Bem's showing people seemingly predicting future random outcomes slightly better than chance.
And across the board, we saw these repeated statistical findings. 1 in 33 million, 1 in 45,000, 1 in a million billion, 10 to the 25th, 1 in 125,000. These aren't borderline numbers.
Plus, the replication efforts across different labs and even acknowledgments from skeptics like Hyman about the quality of some of the research design, it makes it harder to just dismiss it all outright.
It certainly suggests there's something anomalous happening in these controlled experiments that standard models struggle to explain purely by chance or error.
So, for you listening to this deep dive, what does all this research mean for how you think about your own consciousness, about the boundaries of your mind?
Does it make you question if your awareness is truly locked inside your head, limited only to the here and now? Or could there be more to perception, to connection, extending beyond those physical limits, across space, maybe even time?
It's definitely challenging stuff. And if we take seriously the possibility, hinted at by Einstein and explored in these studies, that our linear view of time is incomplete.
Or if those future potentials that Guillemot talks about have some reality.
How does that change things? How does it affect how you think about your choices, about cause and effect, maybe even free will? That's definitely something to chew on.